And just relax and join us in enjoying some very quiet and romantic and relaxed music for a couple of hours.
Your call is being transferred.
Yes, folks, we are back in the studio here. Dwayne and Nobby here with you from Kaleidoscope Ears. And it's nice to have you alongside me in the studio, Dwayne.
Well, not quite alongside you, Nobby. I'm opposite. Let's say that. It's not that cosy here, is it?
Whichever way you want to look at it. But we're going to have a very special feature on tonight. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Me too.
I promised some friends, in particular Todd, that one day I'm going to do a feature of the Pink Floyd, the early experimental Pink Floyd, and I'm looking in particular some of the stuff they did between 1968, after Syd Barrett departed, right through to just before The Dark Side of the Moon was recorded in 1972. So they did some of the most trippiest music back then. And they were very experimental. There was no other band like them in the world. And they had such a profound impact on the music world that their sounds still echo around all kinds of form of music that are here today.
Echo, so to speak.
Yeah, echoes in every sense, yes. So we're going to revisit the time period when cows were flying through the air, when there were atom-hard mothers, when there were mass gauges of Oxymenes and all kinds of things happening with the Pink Floyd. Anyway, we'll tell you a little bit more about these expressions as we go through the next 2 hours. I was just playing some interviews to Dwayne on the way coming in, and as you folks out there probably know, that we ourselves sometimes have the privilege to interview some of the musicians that we are very fond of, and we feature those interviews here on air, and sometimes we think that we are quite bad in what we do, and sometimes it comes across okay, but there was an interview that was conducted with Roger Waters by someone, I think in Holland, about 1968. In about September 1967, and
I think it's a great example of what not to do as an interviewer.
Yeah, and it's actually quite funny, But here it is. I'm going to play it for you, so you'll be able to enjoy it the same way that Dwayne did when I introduced it to him. So here is an interview with Roger Waters and someone in Holland, I think.
De gjorde bara ett uppträdande med sin söndagsmusik på julmusiken där deras ljusshow väckte en del uppseende. Efter showen träffade jag basisten i gruppen och bad honom presentera sig själv och de andra medlemmarna.
There's me, I play the bass, my name is Roger Waters, Syd Barrett plays lead guitar, Rick Wright plays the organ, and Nick Mason plays the drums.
And you four together make the Pink Floyd. Why that certain name?
No reason. It's just sounds like a nice name to us. It's really just a registration mark. It's better than calling ourselves CCE 338 or something like that.
When was the group formed?
A couple of years ago, I guess. Just playing in back rooms, around when we were all students.
All the music you're performing with now, is that original material or is there anybody else writing it?
No, it's all stuff we've written ourselves. Well, most of it's written by Syd. Yes.
Could you please try, at least in words, to express the kind of music you're performing?
No.
You say it's impossible?
Yeah. It's almost impossible to express it in music, let alone words.
Okay, to which kind of music it is connected?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay, your first record, Arnold Lane, when was that released?
In England it was released about 6 months ago.
And your LP now, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, when was that released?
In England 3 weeks ago.
And that's all original stuff on it too?
Yeah.
Your latest single is See Emily Play. Who is Emily?
If you can find out who she is, write and tell us, because we don't know. She could be anyone. You know, she's just a hung-up chick. That's it. Is there any new single release planned for you in the near future? Well, there's one plan, but we haven't written the song yet. Are there any future plans planned for you in the near future? Are you going to the States or something like that, or are you staying in England? Well, obviously we'd like to go to the States, because there's a lot of bread out there. But whether anyone will ask us to go is another question. You know, it really depends on the record breaking in the States. If a record breaks, you know, it's cool. If it doesn't, we don't stand a chance.
Well, there you got it, folks. If you already got a sarcastic man, you ask questions like that, you even get him more sarcastic.
Man, I tell you, it's he's a tough interviewee as well. I'd be nervous now if I ever had the chance to talk to him. But you are listening to Kaleidoscope Ears on Edge Radio with me, Dwayne, and Nobby, and you can tune in via the web, edgeradio.org.au, where you can also find us on the program grid and follow along with our interactive playlist as we add it throughout the show. We're going to go through till 8 o'clock tonight, so if you've got any text that you want to send us in the studio while we're on air, send us one, please. 0427 Edge FM is the number, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the early years of Pink Floyd.
Yes, you can look at Roger Waters in so many different ways. He's got so many facets to his personality, but the one that we are in particular and mostly interested in today is his ability as a songwriter and a musician. And he already left his mark really early in the history of Pink Floyd. The first song we're going to feature for you today, I'm not going to necessarily play them all in order, you know, but I'm going to...
I know how hard you'd find that, Nobby.
Oh, there's some sort of order. There's more a thematic order in it rather than going by year. I'm going to feature some really nice live versions of some of the early material, which when the Pink Floyd played live, they always improvised, and their music took on a completely new form of life. They weren't as restricted within a few minutes concepts in the studio. They were able to really let their wings spread, and so they certainly did. And somewhere in between those notes they were putting together in a very, very complex way, some beautiful sounds and music came out, which was like just kept people like under a spell. It's just absolutely amazing music, and it still has that same ability today, you know, to just capture your imagination, put colour into your music, and really have you spellbound. So if you haven't heard much of that particular period of Pink Floyd, well, this is a show for you tonight. And I'm going to start the music off in a minute with one of the best composition that Roger Waters ever composed, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. Actually, incidentally, for all those that have planned to go and see him live next year when he comes to Australia.
Oh, yes, I'll listen now.
Right, very good. I thought you were listening already. That this particular number is still the number that he plays in the encore even today. You know, so
looking forward to that one.
Yeah, and it's just absolutely amazing. And the version I've chosen comes from the Amagama CD, because I listened to lots of different live versions, and you still can't better this one. So here is the Pink Floyd with Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. Well, how can you better this Pink Floyd with Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun? Just absolute magic, and it still captivates you today.
Absolutely beautiful stuff. Hey, Nobby, I want to ask you a question. We're referring to the band as The Pink Floyd, which obviously they were called The Pink Floyd for the first album with Syd Barrett. When did they stop being referred to as The Pink Floyd and just go to Pink Floyd, and why?
It's a difficult question to answer. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly why. I can only give you some inkling of why I think they did.
Well, in that interview with Roger Waters, he was a bit irritated with the interviewer, I think, and refused to answer where the name came from. So is there a story behind that?
I just said it's just like any label. It's just a label to him, and it's a name by which you can market your product. But both the name Pink, I couldn't tell you now the full names on them, but both Pink and Floyd were two blues musicians. And when the Pink Floyd first formed in Cambridge, I think, with Sid Barrett and Roger Waters all being uni students, and with Dave Gilmour, who was not in the band at that time, but he was one of their friends. They were influenced by that blues music, and they started off as a British blues cover band. So if you had some bootlegs of the very early Pink Floyd, you can hear them play songs like Lucy Leave, which was a blues number, and quite a few other blues numbers they did, until they eventually just dumped anything to do with anyone else's music and concentrated on recording their own. And when they started doing that, and also keeping in mind their early live shows were not just playing songs, they were a musical experience. It's something that has never been seen or heard before. Pink Floyd was one of the first bands to utilise a light show, you know. And also,
and freeform, yeah.
Yeah, well, see, like, we take for granted today terms like progressive rock and psychedelia, but back then there was no definition for psychedelia. Was understood as being mind expanding, but as a form of music no one ever heard about it. So once Sid Barrett left the band and Pink Floyd continued from there on, I think they just simply dropped the and just were referred to simply as Pink Floyd. You know, even by the time they brought their second album out, A Saucer Full of Secrets, in 1968, it was just simply credited to Pink Floyd. So no longer the. Maybe Sid Barrett was the. Who knows?
No, he wasn't.
Who wasn't? Anyway, we're going back to the music. Amagama, of course, was an absolute magical album. There was 2 studio sides to the double album, which was quite experimental and so, yeah, okay, you know, it was quintessential Pink Floyd, but, you know, not really at the musical best, but the 2 live sides were amazing.
I just have to jump in quickly. We just got a text through from Satine and Angie who have tuned in, so I just want to give a quick shout out to them. Great to have you listening.
Yeah, it's really nice to know that actually someone out there listens to some great music. So
and Michelle, I know Michelle's listening too. So
very good. Hello to Michelle as well.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Amagama is concerned, the album was recorded live in Manchester at the Manchester College of Commerce on the 2nd of May 1969. That was as far as the first 3 tracks were concerned: Astronomy Domini, Careful with That Exergy, and Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. And A Saucer Full of Secrets was actually recorded in the Mothers Club at Birmingham on the 27th of April 1969. But on that Manchester concert, they played one other song which didn't make it onto Amagama, and that was a complete version of Interstellar Overdrive, which of course came from the first album with Sid Barrett. But now here it's with Dave Gilmour on lead guitar, and they totally reinvented it. You know, it's a shame that it didn't make it onto the initial Amagama album, but I was able to unearth that one, so let's listen to it together. And yeah, it's a totally different experience. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do every time I hear it. Here's Pink Floyd, rather. We dropped the with Interstellar Overdrive. Well, there you got it, folks. Pink Floyd with Interstellar Overdrive with Dave Gilmour on lead guitar. And that was a very early version of it. As you could hear, rather, it was rather experimental and had its very quiet moments, but it just wove the magic around you and kept you on the edge of your seat and attentive all the way through. Of course, in later years, Dave Gilmour and Pink Floyd perfected the Astronomy Domini version. As a matter of fact, on the 1994 tour and thereafter, they used it even as the opening song to most of their concerts. So it was a song that is firmly entrenched in the Pink Floyd catalogue. And we also had some comments that there are people listening in to us and greeted us on the internet. And
yeah, Dwight, in fact, he's listening up north on the north coast, I believe, somewhere. I'm taking a guess there. You're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, Dwight. He is listening with several species of small and furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with the radio.
Yes,
Ooh.
and also thanking you very much for helping us out with the blues members on whose name Pink Floyd was based. Can you read them out for us?
No, because it looks like Dwight's gone and deleted them.
Oh, right, okay. I think it was Floyd. Was it Pink Anderson
And Floyd Council?
and Floyd? Yeah, something like
Is
that.
that right?
That
Yeah.
sounds about right. Okay.
Also, one other thing that
thank you very
Dwight
much
has
for
mentioned, if you go to facebook.com/Kscope Ears, there's a little post there from Dwight, who I hope this isn't true, that I hope you've got 2 extra copies, Dwight, and you are actually going to the Wall tour, but he says he's got a couple of tickets to the Wall in Melbourne on the 7th, which is a Wednesday. That's the gig we're going to, Nobby. I think there's a couple more that have been put on since then, but he's got a couple of tickets to that. If you want to check out our Facebook page, and you can send Dwight a private message if you would like to grab those tickets from him.
Right. Okay, let's get back to the music. And again, I couldn't improve on the version of A Saucer Full of Secrets than the one that's found on Amagama. But just let me tell you a couple of things about Saucer Full of Secrets that will also give you a little bit of insight in the recording process of Pink Floyd. And that is, before they went into a studio to actually nail a number and record it and put it onto vinyl back in those days, you know, so it can be remastered for CD some 30, 40 years later, they would have a track in mind, rehearse it, play it live, don't know what to call it, you know, sometimes whatever came to their head, they call it. They premiered A Saucer Full of Secrets on BBC Radio, for instance, and there it was introduced as the masked gadgets of Hercules. But then later on, when they did a suite called The Man and the Journey, I'll tell you a little bit more about it in the next segment, they referred to it as the masked gadgets of Oxymenes, you know, so get your dictionaries out and see what it all means, you know. But eventually they went and called it A Saucer Full of Secrets. And that's the version that we got queued up for you. So put your feet up and relax with the Pink Floyd. Yes, if you are hearing us loud and clear, that means you have tuned into Kaleidoscope Ears on Edge Radio 99.3 FM.
And you don't have a hearing impediment.
Very good. You can't afford having that listen to the magical sounds of Pink Floyd.
Definitely not. The goosebumps are up in the studio, I can tell you. And they're not mine.
It's
they're yours.
Absolutely spine-tingling stuff. This was the embryo. They didn't actually record the embryo and put it on any of their official albums, although I think it appeared on the More soundtrack as a studio version. But whenever they played it live, they elaborated on a song, put little sound effects in children, schoolyards, babies and whatever else, you know, and it just added to the atmosphere. Some absolute beautiful, tranquil sounds, just, you know, just captivate you. So I absolutely love it.
That's the beauty of these bands, being able to record their music as live, and having the freedom, I guess, to be able to do stuff like that. Because a lot of bands these days, even Porcupine Tree, a little bit when we were there, there's so many overdubs going on that they have to stick very closely to a certain formula, and they don't have that ability to be able to go outside and improvise as much anymore. So I think that's a bit of a disappointment these days in the modern technological age, which is something, in some ways, I wish I was back there then listening to all that improv.
The good news is that it was preserved for our enjoyment today,
it's
so we still can revisit it.
Yeah, but I want to be in there. It'd be just a whole new experience.
Yes, it certainly would be, especially with the light shows and the videos that already had working along with that back then. I mean, just amazing. They were the innovators. Pink Floyd were the inventors of the light show into music. They were the first ones to do it. And often, as I heard in one of the interviews that I was listening to during the week, they would actually play to the effects that they were seeing on the screen. So they were improvising and playing music along to those visual effects that they were experiencing on stage. So they were interacting with the light show and the music, and the light show, vice versa, with the music. Quite amazing stuff. Whoever came up with the idea, hey? I'll tell you something else that was happening back in 1968. There was the birth of the concept album. You had The Who working on Tommy. You had the Kings with a concept album called Arthur and the Decline of the British Empire. But Pink Floyd put their own little concept together, although they never put it onto an album. But they called it The Man and the Journey, and it's just simply just representing a day in the life of a man. And so they broke it up in tracks like that. The first track was a Daybreak. They call it Daybreak, but it was actually Grantchester Meadows from the Amagama album. The second track was Work, which was Biding My Time. The third track was then they linked it up with some little tracks, that they composed just for the particular setting. The third track was called Afternoon. Then the fourth track was called Doing It, which was an instrumental, and actually it was an early version of the Grand Vizier's Garden Party Part 3, which also appeared on the Amagama album. Then they finished off the first part of the show with a track called Sleeping, and then Daybreak. Then they went into The Journey, and The Journey was... the first track was called The Beginning, which was Green is the Colour. So they used some of their already composed numbers and just put them together as a concept, which was also a great idea, I thought. Then the next track, that was an interesting one, and I'm going to feature that one for you next, was entitled Beset by Creatures of the Deep. And that was an early version of Careful with That Axe, Eugene. So it was just an instrumental. So that's how they often introduce some new tracks and then started to improvise and improve on them until they perfected it. The third track was called The Narrow Way, which of course was The Narrow Way Part 3 from the Amagama album. The Pink Jungle was the next track, and that was a live recording of Pow R Tok H, which was, I think, a B-side of one of the early singles. And the fifth track was The Labyrinth of Oxymenes, which was a different title for Moonhead, and that instantly would remind you of Steve Wilson, wouldn't it? And that's maybe where the idea came from the mass gadgets of Oxymenes. So they used the name again, The Labyrinth of Oxymenes, Moonhead. The sixth track was called Behold the Temple of Light, which was an early version of the Nile song that appeared on the Moore soundtrack. That was the basic instrumental then. And the final track was called The End of the Beginning, and that was an alternate title to A Saucer Full of Secrets, the final part. So that was a complete suite of The Man and the Journey, Pink Floyd's first concept in a musical setting, so there you got it. Now, from that particular suite, I'm going to play you they usually used to play The Beginning, which is Green as the Colour, and Beset by Creatures of the Deep, and they linked it together. So I'm going to give you that treat right now. And it is from a 1969 live performance in Amsterdam in Holland. How about that? Green is the colour, and Beset by Creatures of the Deep with seagull sound effects, a lot, So they really tied it together, and it must have been an absolute magical experience to be there in the audience in 1969 when they, in particular in 1969 when they premiered and toured Europe with it. Just absolutely amazing. But anyway. I want to stay with Beset by Creatures of the Deep for a little bit more. I've got next lined up some studio recordings from the Zabriskie Point album, which was a soundtrack that Pink Floyd was working on. But just before I go into that, thanks very much, Dwight, for pointing out to me that the embryo did not appear on the Moore album. because...
That's all right, Nobby. Everyone makes mistakes.
I had Cymbalon in mind, and I was actually going to play Cymbalon tonight, and I've been absolutely kidding myself that I haven't got a version here, so I can't play Cymbalon tonight. That's another piece that came absolutely alive when they did play it live. And you are correct that the embryo only appeared on the Works album. Incidentally, for those that don't know, that Pink Floyd was so upset that that particular studio version snuck out onto the Works album that Pink Floyd as a band sought an injunction to ban the album from being sold, but they went ahead with it anyway, and now it's part of the Pink Floyd discography and catalogue. So, but aren't we glad that we got the studio version tucked away there somewhere?
Certainly are.
Right. In the works a lot. Anyway.
You're a funny man, Nobby.
Creatures of the Deep was a beautiful line that they developed, this distinctive bass lines through it, some lovely guitar playing by David Gilmour over the top, but it took on a more sinister note as they were trying to develop it further and further. The song was then named Murderistic Woman. Another title they gave it at the time was called Murderous Woman, and when they did the Zabriskie Point soundtrack, they called it Come In, Number 51, Your Time Is Up, and eventually it became Careful with that X Eugene. But I'm going to play you the Zabriskie Point version now, which is entitled, like I just said, Come In, Number 51. Wow. That was the extended version, by the way, of Come In, Number 51, Your Time Is Up, that you can get on the bonus CD if you buy the 2 CD version of Zabriskie Point. And also from Zabriskie Point was another quintessential number that I absolutely loved.
Quintessential, we got the word in.
Oh, I mentioned it already once, and I slipped it past you, and you didn't even notice.
Really? Where was I?
Oh, early on, in the studio, right opposite me, as you said, not next to me. And the next number from Zabriskie Point I'm going to play for you is Heartbeat Pigmeat. Actually, I was just looking at the liner notes here that I've got here, and it actually mentioned that the embryo, getting back to the embryo, was recorded for the Amagama album but didn't make it. Very good. And musically,
interesting.
It would have fitted in perfectly, but there you go. I don't know why they left it off. They could have always issued a 2 LP set as a studio one and had a different live and with a complete live concert on it, but you never know what goes on in someone else's set, especially not if it's to do with record companies. They're a law to themselves. Anyway, so here is Pink Floyd with Heartbeat Pigmeat, which was used on the Zabriskie Point soundtrack. Well, as the title of this number indicates, it was a majestic track, and it was entitled Red Queen Theme, and it was a studio outtake to the Zabriskie Point sessions. Some fans out there, incidentally, I can't tell you where or how to get it, you've got to find that out yourself, compiled actually a Zabriskie Point studio album together and did an absolutely amazing job. Search it out. It is the lost Pink Floyd studio album that should have been released. They never. And, well, maybe they still will one day. Who knows? But what amazing songs are on that. And that was one of them, Red Queen Theme. Now, I'm looking at the track listing of stuff we've played so far. I mean, this is
just hard, isn't
amazing.
It? Very hard.
This is amazing stuff. But we're quickly running out of time. So I can't cover that period and not play the song that's being voted by most Pink Floyd fans as being the best song they ever did. And what song do you think I'm talking about?
About. That's Echoes.
Yeah, Echoes, of course. But I'm going to compromise. I can't play the full version, otherwise we soon will be completely out of time. And there are some fantastic episodes. Actually, one of the best versions of Echoes I've heard is the recent re-release of Dark Side of the Moon has as one of the bonus CDs a 1974 concert live in Wembley where they featured a whole recording of Dark Side of the Moon, which in some ways surpasses the studio version. If you haven't heard it yet, you have to check it out. I'm not aware whether they actually included the encore on the official set because I haven't bought it yet, but I will, one day, I hope, soon, I hope. But as an encore, they played a nearly 30-minute version of Echoes, and that to me is the quintessential version of Echoes. I would have loved to have played it in its full for you tonight. I
think if you say the word one more time, you would have said quintessential 5 times tonight.
Yes, well, but I've got to leave another quintessential track off, and that is Atom Heart Mother, which, again, they did 4 or 5 or maybe half a dozen live performances with a complete choir and brass section, everything, and absolutely mind-blowing. It walks all over the studio version. Really, it does, And again, because of time constraints, I won't be able to play it for you tonight, but that goes for about 27 plus minutes, nearly 28. So maybe in one of our future shows I'll sneak some of those longer gems in, but we won't be able to do it tonight. But I've got to play you Echoes, so I compromise, and I'm going to play you Echoes Part 1 from the Live in Pompeii show. Like I just said off air to Dwayne, this is one of my most favourite musical parts of all time, with David Gilmour chomping away, doing his funky, screaming, shouting guitar bits on Echoes. It just thrills me every time I hear it, and I hope you got the same thrill, the same goosebumps. But what I was going to say to you as well is that we haven't decided yet what we're going to do next week, have we, Dwayne?
No, not yet.
So we'll have to let you know over our website that people can check out on.
Yeah, facebook.com/Kaleidoscope Ears, twitter.com/Kaleidoscope Ears, kaleidoscopeears.com, and edgeradio.org.au. We'll post something up there on the front page as soon as we've got something booked in for next Sunday.
Yes. In 1967, Syd Barrett gave an interview, and he was asked about what sort of music does Pink Floyd play, and he said something along the lines that we play very loud. We don't play music you can hum to, but we want to play music that will shred your brains. That probably get you running away screaming. So they were in to shock people and whatever. I mean, I don't see so much of a shock. Probably at the time it was a culture shock for people to listen to this totally new music. Perhaps we have got too used to the quality of Pink Floyd by now that they can't shock us with it anymore.
Yeah.
But there was a whimsical side to Pink Floyd as well. And even though I haven't got time to play Atom Heart Mother itself, I thought I'd play you a nice little rare version of Fat Old Son, which came from the album. That Fat Old Son, what a lovely song. I mean, even though the vocals were quite whimsical, it's part of that Pink Floyd from that period, and some great music, some beautiful guitar lines in that particular version as well. We've come to the end, and we haven't even got to Obscured by Clouds, which is, well, I often have said that. When people ask me, what's your favourite Pink Floyd album, I usually mention Obscured by Clouds.
But we're obscured by time.
Yeah, we are definitely are, but...
that was my attempt at a knobby joke.
Right, there you go. It came across rather poorly, but
okay.
but it's acceptable. But then again, so do my jokes. They come across poorly. The thing with Obscured by Clouds is I just love the light and shade that goes throughout all the music, from music that's right in your face to whimsical notes and back again. The only weak track on there is probably the last song, which goes on for a little bit too long in the fade out, but otherwise, what a great album it is. And it's one of the lost gems of Pink Floyd, and that was just before they recorded Dark Side of the Moon, so you want to check that album out. We might even feature it one day as one of our classic albums. I didn't want to finish off such a great show on a whimsical note, though. So,
want a bit more power?
Next to Echoes, probably the song that appeals most to me from that particular period of Pink Floyd is the one with all its many titles, whether it was called Beset by Creatures of the Deep or Come in Number 51, Your Time Is Up, Murderistic Women, or whatever. But the final finished version was Careful with That Ex Eugene, and which also appeared on the Amagama album, as you probably all aware if you're already a Pink Floyd fan. But I chose a different live version, very powerful one. It will blow you away. So with that, I would like to say goodbye. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll catch up with you again next week.
Catch you again.